Welcome to the Book Fair podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have several notable YA releases for teenage readers. Despite vocal backlash, a public Storytime saw an incredible turnout, and a Chicago theater is running an art installation based on book banning laws. Coming this Friday, we will have an interview with Taylor Hobbs, author of the newly released YA book Heartbreak and Other Organ Failures. Now let's begin this episode by looking at new releases for this week, starting with Swing by James Yang. A Korean-cued child shares with their father both a passion for tennis and an admiration for tennis player Arthur Ashe, whom the duo watch on television each week. Ashe, similar to Dad in many ways, represents the sport's apex, embodying not just athletic prowess, but composure and grace in competition. Inspired by Dad and Ashe, the protagonist learns ways to self-center when, quote, my brain feels like it's bouncing just like the tennis ball, and to extend some grace to a classmate who genuinely admires the narrator's game. Exceptional use of the horizontal format underscores the young figure's smallness against both the court's physical space and the child's life goals, when a steady sequence of backhand practice finally results in a ball finding the sweet spot with a tiny but satisfying thwack. It's the winning shot in a book that never faults. An author's note concludes, background characters are depicted with various skin tones, and this book is recommended for ages 4 to 8. Next is Shook by Julian Randall with illustrations by Nathan Walker. Randall leverages emotionally resonant verse accompanied by illustrations from Walker to introduce Shake, a black 12-year-old basketball player grappling with the triumphs and trials of becoming an athlete. Shake's father, a former star basketballer turned coach, has high hopes for his son's future, and Shake is determined to exceed expectations. Quote, don't nothing shake, the unflappable middle schooler, and with support from his mother, father, and West Side Chicago community, Shake feels secure. But when his father is uncharacteristically late to an important game, Shake, distracted, missteps, leading to a fractured ankle. Unable to play ball while he recovers, Shake's sense of self falters, and his self-imposed isolation strains his once steadfast relationships. Mounting medical expenses add pressure at home, and things escalate when Shake verbally lashes out at a belittling teacher, resulting in school suspension. Sensitive depictions of Shake's shifting mental health and its interpersonal impact paint a compassionate portrait of a young athlete navigating injury, anxiety, and self-worth, confronting mental health stigma and emphasizing the value of seeking and accepting help. This astute narrative thoughtfully handles issues of identity. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next is Ghost in the Night by Tiffany D. Jackson. Ghost hunting antics unexpectedly send 3 black youths on a murder investigation across a heart-pounding adventure from Jackson that features laugh-out-loud humor alongside tense emotional stakes. Raised by her late grandmother while her blues musician father toured the country, 12-year-old amateur photographer Harmony persuades her dad to bring her along on his upcoming tour. Attending a ghost walk in New Orleans ignites within Harmony an obsession with the supernatural, and she joins tours at every stop, determined to photograph a ghost. When she and her father arrive in Savannah, she's excited to explore one of the most haunted cities in America. More pressing for Harmony's father is supporting a family friend and her 10-year-old son, Robbie, both reeling from the murder of a Savannah community member whose nephew has been missing since the killing. After noticing an apparent spirit in her photograph of Calhoun Square, Harmony enlists Robbie and no-nonsense new friend Maya's help investigating the location further. What the trio find instead could change the community fabric. The protagonist's development and experiences with grief are occasionally overshadowed by supporting character arcs. Nevertheless, evocative details surrounding the blues, voodoo, and historically black locales add texture to this cerebral offering. This book is recommended for ages 9 to 12. Next is Local Gods by Melinda Salisbury. Salisbury injects unique twists into common folk horror tropes around small-town politics to deliver an evocative paranormal thriller. White-cued Sylvie, 17, lives a privileged life in the town of Pine Ridge Hollow until the FBI raids her home looking for her father. They reveal that her dad, currently on the run, is wanted for fraud and embezzlement. Ostracized by her community, who made up a majority of her father's clientele, Sylvie flees to the cursed West Woods. There, she stumbles across and is mysteriously drawn to Illiken, a horned god connected with Pine Ridge Hollow. She deduces that Illiken is dying because the town's infrastructure is collapsing due to her father's criminal negligence. Despite the residents' vitriol, Sylvie determines to save both Illiken and her home. It soon becomes clear that Sylvie meeting Illiken wasn't coincidental. To discover where he's from, why he came, and what she can do to help him, Sylvie must confront not only her father's sins, but the buried secrets of Pine Ridge Hollow. Astute examinations of privilege, accountability, and the danger of conformity render Sylvie's attempts at redemption and the townspeople's scapegoating of the teen in her father's place with piercing complexity. It all coalesces into a socially conscious and serpentine mystery, topped with spine-tingling supernatural imagery. This book is recommended for ages 12 and up. Next is Stepping Up by Chiara Valdez and illustrated by Diana Sai Santos. This affirming graphic novel memoir from Valdez, teaming up with debut illustrator Santos, spotlights how the art of stepping helped the author cope with inequality and prejudice during high school. When she arrives at prestigious Phillips Academy Andover, Valdez, an Afro-Dominican student from Washington Heights, finds it is difficult to fit in with her mostly wealthy white classmates. Privilege, racism, and elitism feel like part of the fabric of Andover, but Valdez determines to work hard and make friends, soon finding refuge with fellow black and brown students. Encouraged to join SLAM, Andover's step team, Valdez is elated to discover the first thing to truly excite her since her arrival. Those students make ignorant comments about the team's dance moves and claim that step shouldn't be considered a sport. Valdez ignores them, finding confidence and connection through stepping that makes her feel more like herself than she has all year. Teen Valdez's introspective internal dialogue narrates the isolation she experiences at Andover before finding step. Events portrayed via sketchy, digitally rendered artwork with minimalist backdrops. The result is a raw glimpse into a lonely teen's journey toward feeling seen and understood. This book is recommended for ages 13 and up. Next is Everything Comes Back to You by Jackie Khalil-Lieh. Spanning 4 years of high school, this complex romance epic from Khalil-Lieh follows an autistic Palestinian-Canadian teen's hard-won journey toward self-understanding and independence. Just before starting 9th grade, Lennon Hadid learns that her older sister Georgie is pregnant, a revelation that sends shockwaves through their image-conscious family. Lennon and Georgie grew up under the weight of their immigrant parents' expectations, particularly their father's insistence on preserving the family's reputation within their Christian community in Toronto. This pressure becomes particularly overwhelming as Lennon enters high school, and she experiences loneliness, struggles to navigate social situations, and confronts her long-suppressed desire for romance. When she forms an easy connection with popular sophomore John Brody during a school trip, her attraction for him deepens despite complications around John's existing relationship and her father's preference that she date church-going family friend Theo, whom he views as a more suitable match. Candid discussions of masking are especially striking, and skillful explorations of class differences, alcohol dependency, and slut-shaming organically twine with the central romance. Grounded in astute emotional insight, this intelligent work offers a memorable portrayal of first love. This book is recommended for ages 14 and up. The final title this week is Whenever You Are by Martine Leavitt. Leavitt incorporates light speculative elements into a fresh contemporary tale about an incarcerated teen finding hope after a traumatic event. 15-year-old Clements Todd, who longs to do something fine upon his eventual release from juvenile detention, wonders about becoming a poet. When he confronts a security officer depriving fellow detainees of medical care, Clem and his only friend, physics-loving Finnegan Kelly, are each punished with separate, solitary confinement. On a rare yard break, Finn informs Clem that his cell harbors a wormhole to the past that will enable Finn to change their futures. Skeptical, Clem suspects that solitary confinement has caused Finn to hallucinate, until Finn abruptly vanishes. Sharp-eyed Prose relays Clem's testimony to prison administrators and a mysterious investigator following Finn's disappearance, while Clem's affecting stream of consciousness verse chronicles events leading up to the present. Quick pacing and an unforgettable voice balance bleak descriptions of prison abuse and Clem's earnest, relatable pining for a dog, a girlfriend, and a better life. It's an affirming, intrigue-packed offering that closes with a delightful spark of ambiguity. This book is recommended for ages 14 and up. That covers the new releases for this week. Next, we'll be taking a look at some news. But first, if you appreciate the work being done on the Book Fair podcast, there are a number of ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, or follow wherever you are currently listening to help push the show out to new listeners. Second, you can follow the podcast on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok at BookFairPod. You can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair to find episodes posted early as well as links to news sources used throughout the show. Following on Patreon is free and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. Of course, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Now, on with the show. Next, let's take a look at the news, starting with a brief story in Arkansas where a federal appeals court has ruled that a book banning law can officially go into effect. Act 372, passed in 2023 and stopped shortly after by a lawsuit by multiple parents, libraries, and bookstores, is a law that would prohibit minors from accessing materials considered obscene and will be allowed to take effect following a federal judge's ruling. Judge L. Stephen Graz, in a 24-page ruling, said that the plaintiff's statement that Act 372 is unconstitutionally vague was not correct. Under this law, individuals who, quote, furnish a harmful item to a minor could be charged with a Class A misdemeanor, facing jail time or fines up to $10,000. One potential resolution in following the new law is that libraries would comply by creating strictly adults-only areas, removing access to books written for young readers simply on the assumption that they may be inappropriate. Judge Grass said that the courts cannot, quote, conjure up their own hypotheticals en route to string down laws as overbroad, end quote. Next, cities throughout Iowa are contending with the effects of a recently passed tax cut and its implications on public libraries. Public libraries are funded by a mix of local, state, and federal tax dollars, and typically the city tax revenue helps fund the largest portion of library budgets. The Iowa House recently passed a property tax bill that will be affecting budgets for public services in local communities. The $4 billion property tax cut will limit most local government revenue growth to 2% in an effort to slow rising property taxes. In Des Moines, residents are voicing concerns that libraries could face possible reductions in staffing, hours, and resources. City officials say that they are evaluating which departments and services may need to be reduced or consolidated. The city of Des Moines has not yet made final decisions. The Highland Park and Oak Park Neighborhood Association planned a meeting to discuss ways to support and preserve local libraries. One resident said, quote, "We see the efforts of it down here at the street level, where our parks suffer, where our libraries suffer, where our safe communal gathering spaces start to fall apart. We feel it first," end quote. Other Iowa cities are preparing for possible impacts to libraries, schools, first responders, and other public services. The bill is currently awaiting a signature from Governor Kim Reynolds, and changes would not take effect until fiscal year 2028. In more positive news, our next story comes from Missouri, where despite state backlash, a library story time proceeds with a full house. Missouri's Attorney General Catherine Hanaway wrote to a local library board saying that residents have requested her office make sure that the library's Rainbow Storytime event is, quote, conducted in a manner consistent with Missouri law, end quote. Hanaway, in her letter, reminded Daniel Boone Regional Library in Columbia that providing minors with pornography is illegal, as is displaying sexually explicit material in a public location. The Missouri Attorney General also wrote that holding events that are not designated for the proper age group could jeopardize the library's state funding, an implicit threat against the library. The description for Columbia Public Library's Rainbow Storytime said, quote, "Join us for a queer-led storytime with an LGBTQ+ theme. We'll share stories, sing songs, and do an activity with time to meet new friends at the end," end quote. The event description on the library's website also listed that the event is meant for families, toddlers, and preschoolers. Library spokesperson Mitzi St. John wrote in an email to ABC 17 News that the 30-minute event included readings of picture books, Rainbowsaurus, and Bigwig, neither of which include sexual content. This all came about early last week, and just a few days after, the scheduled event went on as planned. More than 100 people attended the event, walking into Columbia Public Library over sidewalks covered in colorfully drawn chalk messages, such as "Love is love, love wins," and "Trans rights are human rights." With 3 times the numbers usually seen on Saturday Storytime events, not everyone could be accommodated in the reading room, and some stood just outside the doors around the early childhood section to watch and listen. Robin Westfall, Daniel Boone Regional Library's executive director, said the staff didn't know what to expect for the turnout amid the controversy, but was overwhelmed by the support the community showed. Quote, "The amount of support that we received today, the enthusiasm, just the energy here today, you can just feel that. It's about joy. It's about love. It's about community. This should be something we should be able to do on a regular basis without getting the attacks that we've gotten, especially from elected officials." End quote. Mayor Barbara Buffalo was at the event after she received messages on social media requesting her to attend. In contrast to Attorney General Hanaway, Mayor Buffalo said it is part of her job to participate in community events, as well as being there for residents. Quote, "You have to step up and show your support for community members, whether it's postal workers who are fighting for better wages and living conditions, to libraries who want to host welcoming spaces for everybody to listen to a good story." The support went even further, with State Representative Greg Bush, Council Member Vera Elwood, and Sharon Jones, who is running for a vacant City Council seat. Our final story for this week is a brief look at an art installation protesting against censorship. Throughout the month of August, Theater Y Gallery in Chicago, Illinois is exhibiting an art installation as part of a 4-part project examining the life, suppression, destruction, and preservation of books. Inventory of Lost Books, Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 is an immersive installation that places audiences inside the moral and emotional landscape of censorship. Through visual art, sound, video, live performance, and public participation, visitors encounter books as evidence, witnesses, symbols, and absences. Inventory of Lost Books is open from August 6th through August 23rd. Admission is free. Entry is timed to 30 minutes and is open to small groups. Hours and dates are listed online. Reservations are recommended, and you can learn more about the Inventory of Lost Books project as well as the artists behind it at nonopera.org. This will conclude another episode of the Book Fair podcast. Coming this Friday, we will have an interview with Taylor Hobbs, author of the new YA novel Heartbreak and Other Organ Failures. If you'd like to stay up to date with the show, you can follow wherever you are currently listening or on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at BookFairPod. If you'd like to help the Book Fair podcast grow, you can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair. Following on Patreon is free, and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. You can find links to news sources as well as episodes posted early. Simply add the RSS feed to your preferred podcast platform. Of course, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you so very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk at you next time.